Hi, you all, and welcome to the Voices of Logistics Planet podcast, where we deep dive into the world of logistics, uncovering its many layers through the voices of industry professionals. Today, we are hosting an really experienced guest, who has worked in various top and senior positions within logistics and supply chain at multinational companies like Huawei, Honeywell, Procter Gamble, Hewlett Packard, and many, many others. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Lorenzo. Lorenzo, thank you for taking the time being part of this podcast.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you to you, and hello, everybody joining this event. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so your journey is really and expertise promise to make this conversation inspiring and valuable for those who want to pursue career in logistics and supply chains, and those who are selling various logistics services
Yeah.
to big companies. So let's start. Yeah, so Lorenzo, please let us know your fantastic journey. How you started in logistics and what you
So,
did there, some
well,
projects.
sure. I'm originally from Italy, from Milan. I left in 1996. I was working in a small couple of companies in logistics, international trade, and I went to Scotland with IBM, where I stayed for 5 years. I did a little bit of IT, then um, logistics, contract management for the biggest manufacturing site in Europe, in Scotland. Then Geneva for 17 years, where I worked for HP, Gillette, between and during the acquisition by P&G. So Gillette, Oral-B, Duracell, and Brown, four big consumer brands businesses. And then worked with Cisco Systems and a small fashion retail business owned by a Russian person called Oji. And then 5 years in Honeywell, 5.5 years in Honeywell. So 17 years in Geneva, and different companies, different industries, different cultures as well. Then I was called in to go to China with Huawei in 2017. So until then, I'd worked as an operations manager, logistics director, working upstream with planning, manufacturing, and downstream with customer service, distribution areas, always managing 3PL relationships and performance, continuous improvement. And a big part of it was also the HUS experience with Honeywell, when I learned a lot about the mindset and behaviors that are important in business, on top of the technical skills. Then got called by Huawei to go and work at their headquarters as a senior advisor, senior expert to executives on various areas, so logistics, operations, strategy, supply chain, technology, corporate supplier relationships, and fixing problems in the countries. So as a person that would go and fix issues in various countries across the globe. So a little bit of strategic work, but also operations performance improvements to processes, systems, and technologies as well. So implementation of technologies in terms of hardware systems and data management. And then came back because of COVID, unfortunately, for various reasons. Came back to Europe, and then I was called to work for NEOM in Saudi Arabia as a director of supply chain services for a startup, let's say, with a $500 billion fund by PIF, Public Investment Fund, sovereign fund, and to work as a director of supply chain services, essentially modeling all the various infrastructure and requirements to support the needs of different sectors, different industries. So my customers were the investors would have actually come to NEOM to invest, to set up their businesses in the region, in the brand new region, completely from scratch, but also the internal customers, which means the economic sectors in NEOM. So water, food, technology, media, education. We set up a couple of schools before I left, and sports, and the various regions in NEOM, so that we became an internal service provider to provide services and solutions to emerging needs of emerging businesses. So that means that you have to be specific when it comes to supporting requirements of different customers, but also try and standardize or bring synergies across your investments so that you don't overspend on your supplies of services. So that was a very good learning curve, because you get to learn what are the specialities of different sectors. Came back, and let's say the last 5-6 years between China, and even working before as a COE person, center of excellence, center of expertise, you shift from a person who's heavily involved in operations or strategy to more an internal consultant when working in a COE structure. because you start harmonizing processes and you say, why do these things work in this region and not in that region, even if we have the same supplier, for example, or we are in the same company. And so, same in Huawei, where I was a senior expert or executive advisor. So you do get involved in operations, but also in strategic thinking and a little bit of consulting. So after that and the Saudi experience, I came back and I started more formally working as a consultant, as an interim manager. I worked for almost 2 years with McBride, the European leader of private label cleaning material for households and industrial needs for the FMCG retailers. So all the various supermarket chains you see across Europe, a very good part of them, when they sell products with their names, they've got a manufacturer called McBride behind it. We did everything from plastic blow molding to actual the liquids that go inside, or the tablets or the powders and the aerosols into the finished products. We put the label, we put the customer's brand name, obviously with different contents depending on customer requirements, and then bring it to customers, to the supermarkets who would put it on the shelf. So I worked as an interim manager initially for a logistics department, as running an RFQ for European transportation, so FTL, LTL, and groupage. And then I was transferred to support a corporate initiative, corporate transformation on order to cash harmonization, rationalization end to end. So essentially involving how do we generate demand, how do we make an offer to customers, what are the commercial terms and conditions, what happens from an order fulfillment point of view, how do we handle logistics, physical warehousing and transportation, and then what happens on the so-called reconciliation part, which means how do we handle claims if there's any returns, or how do we get payments from customers. So this has been very good experience for me, because I was also responsible for the actual operations of customer service. Europe, about 45 people and about 15 or 20, 18, I think, shipping sites, but also the transformation part. So moving the review of the whole end-to-end process across functions and understanding how we could optimize it, how we could improve systems, processes, the way people communicate, which has been a big learning curve that I brought to the company in that sense, and how to improve relationships. So it's always been an evolving path from country to country, across sectors, across regions, across cultures. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. And it's a lot of fun. I do it still with passion and energy. And so here we are. I always say it with a smile, because I like what I do. I like what I've been doing for about 25, 30 years or so. So here we are.
Nice, so it's really impressive. I haven't seen oh, sorry, another professional in the field of supply chains that has so many different experiences. And for me, as of course, I know all those names which you mentioned, but NEOM is one of the projects which I know that DSV invested in this project as well, so
Yeah.
so it's a big thing. So and this is really futuristic, country futuristic project. Yeah, so
Very
it's
ambitious,
some,
very ambitious.
yeah, very ambitious. Hopefully it will see the daylight, yes, soon, so and everything will be
Well, daylight won't
there.
happen from one day to the other. Right? We have to acknowledge that daylight will be taking a lot of days, a lot of weeks, a lot of months, because you're starting to build everything from scratch. There's nothing but the desert. Now, of course, I haven't been there the last couple of years, but since I left the company, but I'm still in touch with a few people, and obviously, it's an ongoing project aimed to be delivered as part of Saudi 2030. But obviously, there's a lot of areas. Even NEOM itself has different economic sectors, different regions, different projects. So they will all come up at different times. And there's an overarching infrastructure in terms of actual movement of goods, of people. So the mobility part and mobility of goods, if you like, the logistics part, the systems implementation, the platform that will control all movements and provide end-to-end visibility. So there's a lot of work that is being done, and a lot of part around technology, around the cognitive cities. So there's a lot of innovation going on as well. So very ambitious, and little by little it should develop in what it's scheduled to become.
Yeah,
over
let's see. I'm amazed.
the.
Everyone will be amazed when this project will be finished, because what Arabians and Saudis are doing, always is something amazing.
Yeah.
So Lorenzo, okay, so you've worked, at you take a lot of many leadership roles in different industries, FMCG, all the parts and big brands and so on and so forth. So I know that every company brings something special to the mindset of a professional, because it's so I'm curious, how has your approach to supply chain transformation and to all the things of doing business and doing supply chains and logistics management has evolved over time, from the beginning to now.
So it's a good question, very difficult answer to give in a short time. But let's say that the more you learn, the more you change, the more you experience differences in the way business is run or the way a culture is within a company. So you learn how to adapt. I think changing means a lot of adaptability. Even as a leader, you have to adapt to the teams you have working with you. It's not only the people who have to adapt to the leader, but also the leader who has to adapt to those who work in his team or her team. It's been my case. I've always tried to be understanding of people's mindset and cultures, upbringing and their personal experiences, which sometimes were much more technical than mine. At the same time, the more you change, the more you grow, the more you learn how to approach a problem. And the more you learn, you have to look at it from an end-to-end, with an end-to-end view. So if there's a decision taken at some point, what would be the impact to other functions? Example, if you're changing the MOQ, minimum order quantities, because you want to save working capital, that's going to be an impact, positive impact on working capital, because we'll buy less and less every time. Or let's say you buy, instead of buying 100 units, I buy 10 times 10. I'll give a stupid example here. But of course, there's going to be 10 times inbound transactions in the warehouse, 10 times the shipments, because you will have 10 split shipments. So what's going to happen to the overall cost of the company? What's going to happen to the overall total cost of ownership? What's going to happen to logistics operations, so to performance? So the more you work, the more you are experiencing different realities, the more you are realize what would be the impact of our functions, what are the things to be taken into account, the implications of a strategy when it comes to execution. Is there going to be an impact to workforce, to unions, to labor, to costs, to profits, to margin, to supply relationships? So, and if you work across different sectors, you can always bring something new from previous companies. And the funny thing is that in my last job, I've always learned more and more as I changed roles, which I really enjoyed. Of course, I was also hired because I could bring something of value, hopefully. But at the same time, in my last job, I remember at McBride, I was having good conversations with my team, and they would always tease me, say, "Oh, Lorenzo, you keep saying when I was at Honeywell, when I was at Cisco, when I was at Huawei, when I was at NEOM, we used to do this, when I was at," and I said, "Well, because you brought me here because I'm bringing experience as an interim manager, which is what the company wants." At the same time, I said, remember that once I left McBride and I go to my next customer, I don't like to call it customer, I like to call it partner or work engagement, I would say when I was at McBride, that's what we did. So there will always be something you put on top of your personal experience, because you build knowledge in that way. And the good thing about a manager, be this as a consultant or a permanent or an interim or a board advisor, is you're hired for experience you have. And pretty much anything that has happened, if I haven't managed it, I probably know how to resolve it. I know what buttons to push when it comes to processes or people, or how you interact with a certain team to resolve it. So it's all coming with experience. So working with big corporates like Honeywell, Cisco, and Huawei, HP. Some are private, some are listed companies, so they have different challenges, and also smaller ones, small startups. I'm also supporting a Swiss-based startup called Authena, which is doing pretty well on the authenticity and traceability part end to end. So every time you build a puzzle of knowledge with experience, or you do it with your own personal growth objectives. So I've always been interested in understanding more how we could leverage technology. So when I was at Huawei, for example, I took on some classes after my master's degree that I taken with Liverpool University in operations and supply chain management. I took some executive education with MIT on AI because, well, first with IMD in Lausanne with digital disruption, what is digital, what is the disruption of technology, and then with MIT on AI, and then IoT because IoT is the one that captures data and sends it back to sort of central database. And then what happens to data because it's so important. So I took a class on cybersecurity because how do you manage, how do you protect the data? So I've always tried to bring pieces of adjacencies in terms of knowledge to help become a better person. When you have to take a decision, you really keep into account all these areas. So I'm hoping that people will appreciate the value that comes from bringing different skills from different companies, from different sectors, because that's what really makes a difference. And that's what I tried to do, and I've really enjoyed it. And you work across different cultures, so you know how to communicate with people. So there's a lot of the learning curve never ends. So something that has got to do with your profession, but also how you portray yourself, how you want to pursue continuous growth. Yeah.
Yeah, so you touch a really good point here. Talk about tech and logistics, and technologies and cybersecurity, and I know there are many opinions on that. If you would talk with some maybe very traditional supply chain directors or
Yeah.
logistic directors, some would say, all those technologies are, just a buzzword. Artificial intelligence is a buzzword. It
Yeah.
doesn't provide actual value. So what's your take on that? Is this becoming, are those technologies a real thing or just buzzwords here? And
No, they are indeed.
is
They are very important. I think what is even more important is what to do with technology, which means how you're going to use it. I keep saying purpose leads technology, which means you want to implement technology. Okay, why? Because you want to improve your own costs, you want to change your business model, you want to improve your customer experience. So find the purpose in what you want to achieve and then understand how technology can help you achieve that purpose. So don't just implement technology because it's fun, because I cannot not show that I've invested in technology, then you end up spending money with no results. So be focused with what you want to achieve. Once you've identified the purpose will lead technology, will tell, okay, that's what I need to achieve my purpose. I want to improve cost. I want to improve my customer experience. I want to improve my database. I want to automate the processes of gathering information from customers, whatever. And once you know what you want to do, then you say, okay, how can technology help me? I'm now working with a small but very promising business called NDI, New Digital Intelligence, as an
yeah.
originator. So providing new business opportunities, linking the objectives of technology with business operations, which is my fundamental skill. I'm not a technologist per se, but I know how to help companies understand what you want to achieve with generative AI, for example. So how can we use generative AI for what? So you need to understand first what you want to achieve, and then I say Gen AI can help you with this or this or this area, can help you in various areas of
Yeah.
processes, operations.
Yeah, sorry, very. I just want to interrupt a little bit. It's really, interesting topic about generative AI. Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah,
uh, can this? Because again, I hear a lot of things here.
yeah.
So some are saying that AI can already now plan stocks, reorder, of stocks. Is it already working, or is this, just still some
So
outside
two things.
help
First
need?
of all, like I mentioned, purpose is very important. You need to know what you want. Second, data is fundamental. The quality of data you have and the amount of data. The more data you have, the better you can train the system, the better the system can learn. But most importantly, the quality of data is fundamental to know that the more quality data you have entered in the system, the better results you get. However, there are intangibles that nobody can plan for. That's why when you think about AI in general, when I studied AI, I studied about the concept about explainability or interpretability, which means think about the medical sector where you go to a physicist and a physicist will use AI to read a scan or to give him the results or give her whatever the results he needs for interpretation of a symptoms of a customer, right? Or interpretation. Well, you want to know what algorithm has been built that gives you that result, because I'm taking responsibility to give an answer to a customer. So I want to know how this algorithm has been built so that I know the logic that the system has used to come to this conclusion or to this other one. I can always overwrite it as a doctor, because I will be able to interpret results in a different way that maybe the system does not know, the machine does not know. So the concept of interpretability or explainability is very important, because it allows you to potentially override. So they always talk about, I think it's Michael Wade, if I'm not mistaken, with IMD, I may be wrong, with or with MIT probably. Anyway, collective intelligence, Tom Malone with collective intelligence, which means the combined power of machines and humans. So it does help you. Yes, it can help you, but you cannot just rely on the machine to do the job for you. It's not completely automated for as long as you've not entered the data. And when it comes to the investments, another part that I forgot, everybody's talking about technology. It means a lot of investments. So do you have a profitable ROI? Do you know when you're going to get to see the light at the end of the tunnel? If you're working with 3PL and it's more technology, not generative AI, but more automation, ASRS systems, who spends the money? What is your contract with your 3PL looking like? Is it a 1-year contract or is it a 5-year contract? If it's a short-term contract, no supplier will embark in such a conversation, because they say, you may kick me out next year. Whereas if there's a good partnership, you share your future strategic goals and you say, okay, we want to invest in this. Who is going to bear the cost of the investment? Is it a capex? Who's going to break it down into small pieces across the years? Who's going to get the benefits out of it? So once you have a good forward-looking view with clear agreements with your suppliers, then you will be able to invest and give them the trust you need to have them maybe invest for you as a customer. If you keep all the information for yourself, no supplier will come and say, okay, I want to invest in you, because they don't necessarily see their own advantage. So technology is also a matter of understanding who's going to bear the costs and who's going to reap the benefits. Yes, so you have to consider the purpose, the investment part, what you want to achieve, quality of data. So there's a lot of things. But in general, yes, generative AI is bringing, or technology in general is bringing a lot of added value to speeding up processes and automating processes that can be repetitive. And this is a great advantage, with obviously the considerations about what's going to happen to workers, and people's jobs will be removed. There will be, however, new ones that will come up. So it's part of the exchange, yes.
Yeah, so really good. So, of course, if I understand correctly, those in supply chains and logistics, they still can be, quite, not don't worry that artificial intelligence will take their jobs. Yeah, it's
No, I
not
wouldn't say
happening
so.
at the moment.
No, I mean, if you think about, for example, what happens with the application of technologies in general, this is an example when I was in China with Huawei, but with other companies as well. I've noticed also with McBride, you're asking a customer to hook up to your TMS, transportation management system, or to your database, or I want you to use my handheld devices because I want to track goods end to end. And usually a 3PL will say, yes, but I've got so many subcontractors, and I'm asking each of them to use your dedicated solution. But I also support other customers who have other requirements. So I would have to go out with 10 mobile phones or 10 apps and ask the driver, upload the information for this customer on this app. So the scaling is difficult. There's solutions, for example, with Autena that I'm promoting, that is agnostic when it comes to handheld devices and so on, but that's another point. But obviously, another point of consideration is, will it be scalable when you have a one-to-one relationship from shipper to 3PL, but then the 3PL has so many subcontractors from whom the business depends for proper updates of IoT information back into the system. So that's also a hindrance sometimes, which needs to be taken into account. Yeah.
Okay, good, Lorenzo. So touch a lot already about technologies, about your journey. So, and you have worked in many different regions. I see that in China, in Middle East, and you name it. So, do you see any differences? Let's say from the supply chain perspective, operations perspective, are those regions, somehow different, or maybe the problems are everywhere, the same, delays and disruptions and other things,
So problems can be the same. The root cause of the problem or how you approach it can be different. To give an idea, and this is down to people, to cultures. I've worked even in Europe. I've worked in Italy, then in Scotland, and then in Switzerland, and even in Switzerland with 4 or 5 different companies. So different cultures, small, bigger companies, one led by in a Russian culture, one in American cultures, one working a lot with Germans. In Cisco, I had a team of 3 reports, and eventually 5 if you think about not only the operations manager, but people from Scotland, from Finland, from the US, from Hong Kong, from the UK, sorry, from England, and Scotland. So it's a matter of understanding how you are approaching the problem. What I noticed how we were approaching problems or relationships with suppliers in China was very different from how we approach them in Europe. So the communication is different, the expectations are different. So if it's a technical problem, if it's a problem that goods are on hold or whatever, how do you approach the relationships with your supplier? How do you make it conducive to partnership, not just I'm the customer, I'm always right, and I beat you up and I give a penalty of 10, 20, $30, which is not always conducive to good partnership. So it really is a matter of there's some technicalities you have to approach to problem solving, and some that are more based on soft skills, relationships. How much have you shared about your strategy with your supplier? How much have you involved other functions when you're taking a certain decision? Do other functions know what the impact to them will be? I've done a very good job. I'm very proud to say with McBride, because I put together the sales teams and the operations team with regular reviews, or at least with the communication at very early stages when they're striking a deal with a customer and you have to sign the commercial agreement. Hang on a minute. Have you got the green light from trade compliance, logistics, customer service, that what you're proposing to the customer is doable? And if it's doable, have you considered the costs that will come out of this? So if you involve functions ahead of time, there will be smoother execution of the contract, and the branding will improve as a result. So how do you approach a problem is down to technicalities, but also the cultural mindset within the company. So there's also systems, for example, in Honeywell, HOS, Honeywell Operating System, based on lean techniques and TPS and so on, which has been fabulous for me, a very good learning curve. We used to have daily stand-up calls, all leadership team, we would all define and discuss any issues that were coming our way so that everybody would be informed and we would be able to take preventive measures. And so that helped us become very, very efficient, because there was a very good system of information sharing. If you don't do that, it would be too late when you realize there's a problem. And so it's a technical issue, yes. It's a matter of internal culture of the company. How do you share information? But also, how do you propose yourself in your relationships with your supplier? Have you engaged with the supplier? Have you shared information? Have you had a good,
Okay.
promising, positive service level agreement that protects the interest of both? So and obviously working in a COE, Center of Excellence, Center of Expertise, I came to realize that same contract, same corporate contract, why is the supplier performing very well in this warehouse say in Europe, and not performing well in Indonesia? What's wrong? The contract is the same, supplier is the same. What's going wrong this time? So is it people, how they approach the communication, how they approach the relationship, how they're stringent in the measurement of exceptions and so on, which leads to excellence in service across the whole network. So you don't really have one single answer to this.
Okay, so basically, yeah. So if you're doing business in one part, and if you need to understand how they approach the problems, and then of course you need to do all the things which needs to be done in this culture. Yeah. So
Correct.
which one
Yes.
do you think? Which countries are more where you can stick to the contract, and which countries are those who are just
So
very flexible and you can't push them.
I, I so let's say that in China, I've seen they like to stick to contract, but sometimes the contract are not very clear when it comes to scenario modeling. So you have to have a perfect modeling of scenarios so that you can put that clause into the contract. But Chinese people are very determined to stick to the contract. They're very much honoring the contractual relationship, but at the same time, I noticed that as a customer, we had expectations that sometimes suppliers were very They thought we were very stringent with our requirements. On the other hand, in general, when you go and start saying, "Hey, contract page 10, clause 3, paragraph 2, section B," it means that things are going wrong. Then you start engaging lawyers and everything. So I've had issues when I was in Huawei where I went to the countries and sorted out problems in Morocco, in Indonesia, without looking at the contract. I say, "Guys, that's what we need to resolve. Let's engage. Let's put down a set of metrics daily." I had the same issues with other companies in Europe where we had issues with our suppliers without making names of suppliers. But for example, in Honeywell, we had a lot of integrations that we needed to do. So there was a lot of business that was inherited from previous companies, previous relationships, previous contracts that needed to be adapted to our way of working. So there was a lot of internal resistance, but we managed to broaden the communication to make it work for both parties. It takes time. So when you get to the contract, usually it's too late. People are starting to prepare their weapons to fight, right? And it's not the way it should be done. A relationship with a supplier should be based on sharing a lot of your strategic objectives, sharing a lot of your data, and telling exactly the suppliers what you want, so that they will be clear with the expectations and the scope of work. They will know exactly what is in scope, what is out of scope. If you don't do that well enough, I always say it's also your fault. It's not always, the supplier is not performing. Have you done your homework internally to give the suppliers all the tools they need to do the work you want them to do, right? You're outsourcing your business to them, give them everything they need to know to do it as if you were doing it yourself. If you don't do that, then you're probably part of the problem. Then how much you stick to the contract, that's another story.
Yes, really good point, because I myself are coming from the supply chains
Right.
and logistics, so I know that how hard it is, because when things happen, everyone just starts to push, let's say, the supplier, yeah, but and it's really hard to explain to the management of the organization, top management, that it's maybe it's our fault, but it's so it's all full, and we need to do this together. But no, you push them, and then of course you can't push a supplier forever, because everyone has limits.
And this is why every time I have relationships with suppliers, I always say, "Guys, please do not just bring your sales guy, bring an ops guy, because everything you promise me, I want to make sure your ops guy says it's doable." Because if you promise something, then you realize you cannot make it happen, or you come back and say, "Well, actually rates are going to change because you're asking for this and this and this." I want to make sure this is clear from the start, which is why, in another example, when I was helping on the order to cash, I did one with Honeywell for the Middle East, standardizing Incoterms, which were different because of various integrations and acquisitions, whatever. But also with McBride, I said, "Guys, we need to involve the operations team right from the start, so that we know that what we promise, what we commit to our customers, can be done at a cost or within the sales price that we offer our customers." And so, it's a matter of sharing information and making sure you're clear with your expectations. And
Yeah, really good point. No, big operations guys to the contracts, because they know what's possible, what's impossible. So, good points. So, and I have no doubts you have chosen a lot of logistics providers, and this information would be really good for those who are choosing logistics providers, and also for those who are selling logistics services. So, what do you think? What companies? What are the biggest mistakes companies are making when selecting a logistics provider? Let's talk about the long-term, contracts, not the short ones.
Well, I think a little bit we covered it just now, which means you're not clear with your expectations. You're not clear with what you want. If you're not clear with what you want, you will not deliver a crisp message to your supplier. So they will not. Stupid example, very basic, but delivery next day, fine. I could come at 10 a.m., 4 p.m., 9 p.m. I'm still on next day. The system will still say, apart from various systems set up, the database in the US, so it's 6 or 9 hours behind, blah blah blah. I'm still on time. If I want you to deliver next day from 10 to 3 p.m., you better tell me. Otherwise, I will consider you late because you've come at 4 p.m. Your supplier will say, the famous contract we talked about, says next day. This is yesterday's next day. Today, it's yesterday's next day. We are delivering today. We are on time. We're not late. So How do you measure performance of your suppliers, and how do suppliers measure their performance, their service performance of you? Are we using the same principles? Are we using the same standards, or am I considering you with a 90% delivery? And they say, no, guys, we are 98.5. I say, hang on a minute. How come performance should be based with one set of metrics? So understand what metrics of what success metrics will be. Are these going to be the same? What do you really want as a customer? Be very clear with your expectations. So you also, to protect your back and say, sorry, I told you. If I haven't told you, the customer, the supplier may say, you haven't told me. I assumed, and assumptions are the worst thing. So make sure you're clear with your expectations, with your deliverables, understanding the challenges. If you have a contract in warehousing, is it open books, so cost plus, or is it closed books with a transactional price? Each of them has pluses and minuses, right? Depending if the business is solid, how good your forecast is, so that you can forecast volumes that your supplier has to manage. So how good that is will determine the type of contract you have to set up with your supplier. So typically the mistakes can be not being clear enough with your expectations, not sharing enough data or quality data. And you have to be a little bit pedantic at the beginning, build up a lot of what if scenarios to be put in the contract, so that, if this happens, well, we know, we figured that out. We know if this was happening, how to act on it, because otherwise people will act to their own beliefs, and maybe the beliefs are good, sometimes they're wrong. And so they hurt you, or you hurt them. So you need to have a solid understanding. If there's a improvement in performance, who's going to get the benefits? If I say, for example, we implemented voice speaking technology when I was in Honeywell at all our warehouses, who's going to get the benefit? I'm asking you to use technology, voice speaking technology. You can improve picking performance. You can reduce customer claims, reduce additional costs. And by the way, you can do the job more accurately and faster. So you probably can remove some people from your warehouse. Ooh. Hey, what is the contract type? Is it cost plus? So I always charge you the same. Or is it transactional cost? So there's a cost per transaction, or is it cost plus? Obviously, if I have less people, I will have the performance, the percentage of management fee will be applied on a smaller amount. So there's a lot of conversations you have to have. If we apply technology, who's going to spend the money? Who's going to invest in it? Is it going to be CapEx? Is it going to be amortized over 5-10 years? Who will fund it? What happens if we put rackings? What happens if we put software, a new ERP, or we need you to make a tailor-made solution for our warehousing operations? I'm going to have at least a 10-year contract. Otherwise, I won't be able to amortize it. So a lot of questions you have to know. You have to know what you want, and you have to tell your suppliers what you want. And it has to be a way that both of you are making money. If you squeeze your suppliers and they're not making any money, they won't last very long with you, because, sorry, you need to live and make money. They have the same needs. So you have to always be very understanding of a business relationship. And I'm not saying you need to be ripped off, but you have to have a certain understanding of how important you are to your supplier versus other customers they have. Right? If I represent 3% of revenue for my supplier, they will probably favor other customers of theirs because they make more money with them. If I'm a big customer to them, they will protect me. They will take me they will pamper me, because they will want to lose the business. So there's a lot of things you need to consider when you prepare a contract, when you decide the cost cost element in warehousing operations, transportation. Are you interested only in the lead time, or are you interested in determining what would be the various in between steps? For example, if I'm moving technology, I'd probably prefer less handlings, because every time there's a handling, there's a potential mismanagement of that will impact the quality of my goods. If you're moving, mobile phones on the air freight network, the more handlings you have, the more you're exposed to risks of thefts, and more touch points, more handling of product, so potentially impacting the quality of your boxes that will arrive unshippable to customers, or you cannot put them on display in the shop. So a lot of requirements depending on the mode of transport, payment type. I mean, there's so much you have to consider. You really have to have experience realities of different kinds to be able to say, okay, what if this happens? So, you cannot have a single answer. Really depends on the lead times, on the mode of transport. When I was working for Gillette, for example, many years ago, as a transport optimization manager, I'm going to have to move the goods from, say, Portugal to the UK. Do I move it by short sea or do I move it by truck? By truck is longer but more expensive. If I move it by sea, I'm going to have a different impact on the lead times, and so the working capital will be impacted. So do I prefer shorter but more expensive mode of transport, or longer but cheaper? Do I want to favor costs or working capital? Do I want to favor availability of goods at destination, or am I not too bothered by that? So you really have to consider everything in order to make a decision. That is not only telling me the lead time from here to there, but you see a lot of blank sailings occurred recently, well, the last few months at least. If I'm missing my port, then the goods will be in transit to a different destination. How do I get them back? So a lot of options you have to consider when you prepare a contract with your supplier. So the more inclusive you are or of potential issue management, the easier will be to handle sort of conflicts, let's say. And then you have to have a clear account management structure in place so that you know what people are serving your business, but also you have to be very clear with them, with your suppliers, with your 3PL, and say, guys, that's the team, that's the logistics and supply chain team, that's how we work. For this kind of issue, go to this person. The contact matrix is the most important, or one of the most important things to keep the relationship healthy and to have a very healthy and fast decision-making process. So, there's a lot of things that I have to take into account. People, processes.
Yes.
Who owns the data? If I share data with you, do you have an NDA? Are you going to, where's your server? For example, in Saudi, there's a law, I don't know if it's changed, but I think it probably hasn't, whereby data has to be held on local servers in Saudi Arabia, cannot go out of the country. So if you come and do business with me, do you have your database in Saudi in KSA, or do you not? If you don't have it, I won't be able to work with you unless there's exceptions or whatever. So you need to have a lot of things. What happens to product safety, data safety, data security? What are you going to do with my data? Cybersecurity. Do I have the right as a customer to come and inspect your cybersecurity system to make sure that when you handle my data, you will protect it as well as I would? We could talk days about supplier management. Sorry, I've given
there's a lot
taken into account.
Yeah, it's really you provide a lot of information, and it's of course for those in serving the manufacturing, and manufacturing organizations. But of course, you also provide a lot of information for those selling logistics services, because as I understand, if you want to sell to big organizations, to complicated.
I do a little bit of self-marketing, right? Because I'm looking for my next assignment, either permanent or contract or interim, whatever. And one thing that I always say, I've done a lot of work with 3PLs for about 30 years now. So I would be a very excellent person working on the contract management side or offering solutions to customers, because I've been a customer myself for such a long time. I would know exactly what a customer wants, right? So I've not only done the supplier management, but also I would be able to be on the other side of the table. So that's very useful when you go and approach a customer. You know what they want. I would know what they want because I've been one of them for such a long time.
Yeah, this is really important. But and maybe you can give advice for those right away, because I have a lot of 3PLs, freight forwarding companies, logistics companies that are listening to us, reading my newsletters. And so what do you think, when they're building value propositions, what I hear from logistics companies varies, they're saying, the price is the key factor here. I lost a deal because, the price was too high. And, I know that this, of course, is in some cases is true, but, when I procured, you never say this, you never say that, you did this and that. It's easiest way to say that the price is wrong, but there are many other things. So when building value proposition, what do you think? How can logistics businesses logistics service providers improve their win rates with companies like you represented?
I mean, you really have to look at the bigger picture. So if I'm using a brand new supplier, if I'm bidding and I'm asking brand new suppliers to come and do business with me, I will have to know they don't know much about my business. So I want to be as clear as possible with my expectations. If I'm using an already existing supplier and asking them to bid again, they're in a competitive advantageous position because they know more of my business, right? So it's not only the rates. Rates are very important, but there's so much more about rates. That's why we need to help the procurement teams understand that it's not just the cost itself, but there's a service element around the cost of freight or the cost of warehousing that has to be taken into account. All the operational implications that matter. What systems are you going to use? If I use your system, if I use you as a supplier, are our systems going to communicate, or do I have extra IT costs to build an interface, right? For example, which I didn't think about. Or what happens with your, say, transit time commitment, 5 days, yes, but what are the options?
If you will delay, yeah, what will
As a
happen then?
delay, who's going to handle that? So do I have all this information ahead of time, or do I just base my assessment on rates? Rates is a wonderful thing, but it's not everything. So there's really a lot you need to consider. So the advice I would give to suppliers, to customers, to shippers, share as much as you can, because the more you share, the better the understanding of the rates will be. And to the 3PLs, ask millions of questions, because the more you ask, the more you'll be able to tailor your offer in a way that you know exactly, I'm going to hit the spot. And I've already put some rates that are making sense. Or you put a lot of assumptions, rates based on this and this and this assumption, so that you clarify how to interpret the numbers. Otherwise, someone behind the desk may just say, okay, this is too expensive, boom, and it goes off to the next one. Hang on a minute, too expensive, however, based on this condition. So put a lot of conditions, ask questions, and think about what if scenarios to include in the tender, and be part of the decision. Sometimes it's not understandable to suppliers. They say, we were the cheapest, but you didn't choose us. Well, because at corporate level, there's another supplier that is making it easier for us to work with, or is cheaper overall. So I had to lose some suppliers when I was at Honeywell, logistics director for EMEA, because I thought, guys, but this is the best rate we have, yes, but at a corporate level, this supplier gives us a better deal overall. So I had to sacrifice a little bit of my P&L to help the company. Fine, fair enough. The company overall would benefit from better rates, combined volumes with the supplier. Fair enough. So sometimes you have to bite the bullet and lose a little bit for the benefit of other functions improvements, or the company's improvements overall, so of their financials. So this also is important to determine what's behind the decision for
Yeah, so you touched a lot of great points. So, as I'm a sales trainer and marketing provider, sales
yeah.
provider, so I have, if I understood correctly, and you are saying that, if you want to do business with you, let's say with Lorenzo at Honeywell, or other company where Lorenzo will serve, you need to be a good salesman, because you need to ask right questions. You need to ask smart questions to understand the whole business
Well,
of
yeah.
which
And that's why
you're
whenever,
in.
like I mentioned, when I have a key account manager sitting around the desk, I said, bring your ops guy with you. I don't just want you to promise something. You tell me something, I look at your ops guy and say, can you commit to that? Or you can go back to your desk and say, no, Lorenzo, sorry, it's not feasible because we didn't consider this and this and this. Tell me from the start what the conditions are. Are these conditions doable, operationally doable, or we'll come back a week later, oh, I didn't think about this and that. So it's important to involve operations in the when you're proposing rates to your customers, when I'm visiting a customer for operations review, monthly, quarterly review, whatever, but also internally, as you're taking decisions, have you involved the operations when you're making an offer to your customers, or when you are deciding who to purchase goods or services from? Because if you have involved the operations, you will have a more comprehensive view of this.
Yeah. Yes, this is true, and you're active on social media and the things. So if you look, some service providers, logistics service providers post about problems, about things that are important for you that are solving. Does this help? If you see that they're building some expertise in the field that is important for you in the field that you're working.
Um, Can you elaborate the question a little bit, Thomas? Sorry, I'm not sure.
Yeah, for example, let's say a service provider, logistics service provider, looking for one, and they are just, having posting some articles, on the problems you're facing on
Sure.
total cost ownership and other things, which just positions them as one that understands your business, your operations, and when this guy, just gives you a call, maybe it's easier to talk with such guy, and maybe you have bigger trust in such service provider.
Indeed, indeed. Of course, you have to have a certain ability to market your service propositions, to give examples of who you've done business with so that they can familiarize. Oh, I know the company, I know someone there, so I can ask, or I know they already work with a sector that is similar to the one that I work in, so I'll be more comfortable in assigning the business to a supplier that has a certain experience in the dynamics of that sector, that industry. At the same time, for a 3PL, it's good to market out and to publish their capabilities. Obviously, will always be wonderful news. There will never be, communication about failures, but there can be a lot that can be done around communicating challenges they had and how they came across. Because the most important thing is not only the end result, but how you got to the end result, which means what did you do to bring solutions? What is your problem solving attitude to helping out resolving a problem? So it's good for me as a customer to know they've got a certain flexibility internally, and it's good for you as a 3PL to show we've covered various areas, various problem types, in various sectors, and we've always been able to deliver
Oh,
customer expectations. So, and you can come
okay.
out showing out technology solutions or on the ground issues or shifting, shipping modes from one to the other, or contractual impact and so on, or use of technology, use of systems and so on.
Okay, good. Thanks, Lorenzo. That's a lot. So for the last, for those, maybe you can give advice for those who are pursuing career in supply chain logistics. What skills are now needed in such positions? Are they changing, and what's happening there?
Well, I speak for myself because I'm coming from a lot of experience across sectors and industries and regions and cultures. I've done large corporates, small startups, big startups, with listed companies and private ones. So diversify your skills and experience, because it will give you not only technical skills, so the hard skills that are needed for the business, but also will give you soft skills, will give you the understanding of how do you approach a problem, how do you communicate with someone from Asia is different from how I will communicate to someone from the Netherlands or from Finland. They've got a very much more direct communication style. So that will help you, that will equip you with the right communication skills, leadership capabilities that help you be a good leader and problem solver. I think the ability that I've gained is to have a strategic goal and understand how to operationalize it in a way that it will be executed with success. So bring experience from the field. If you can work in a warehouse, work in a transportation company, work on different functions with the logistics and supply chain planning, manufacturing, that will really give you a good understanding of the challenges. And that will help you become more marketable, because you bring wealth of skills across different functions and sectors, which is what I have, what I bring, and which is appreciated by some of my customers, and I hope it will be the same for the future to come.
Okay, good. Lorenzo, thank you for your time. Sorry,
Okay,
sorry for
Thomas,
listeners for the tech issues here.
that's fine. I don't see you
So
now, but I can hear you. That's good enough.
yeah, so it's really good. So thank you for all of you joining us today. Thank you, Lorenzo, and let's stay tuned for other episodes of the
Absolutely.
Voices of Logistics
It
Planet.
was very
Thank
good. Thanks
you.
a lot, Thomas. Thanks everybody for following. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.